Who of you have been following kind of the journey of the Artemis spaceship? Just me, okay. All right. I think a lot of you have. It's exciting news. If not, check it out. It's incredible. The world has once again sent people to the moon. And just a couple days ago, an image was released as Artemis makes its way from the Earth to the moon. And they're looking back at the Earth, that iconic photo. And we see there the Earth in a distance, something very small. And many people are making comparisons to the last time that this happened. I won't ask you to put up your hands if you were around the last time this happened, but 1971, 1972 more or less, and the images are similar. And a lot of comparisons are being made between the two. When you see that image of the world in a distance, it changes your perspective. It makes you see things in a different light. It all of a sudden changes how you think about who we are as people. When you look so far back, do things like countries matter? The wars that are being waged, perhaps we see it in a different perspective. Our care for the environment, this one kind of knowledge of how small we are in the universe changes the way we think. If we go back to the year 1600, there was another such sort of idea that when this idea was known, it changed the way people saw their reality and their lives. This was Galileo, another space sort of invention. And Galileo wasn't the first to argue it, but he sort of proved it with his telescopes, the way that the Earth is not the center of the universe. Up until that point, that was taken for granted. The world was the center, the Earth was the center of the universe. Everything went around it. And that carried not just scientific ideas, but deeply theological ideas, ideological ideas, that we were kind of really the center of everything, and everything else went around us. But Galileo showed, of course, that the Earth goes around the sun. And this was an incredible revolution in thought. Once people came to see this, it changed the way that they saw their existence and their very life. No longer was the Earth kind of just the center of everything, but we began to see the vastness of creation. How much is out there? All the stars, all the planets that exist, all the grandeur of creation, and that we are perhaps a rather small part of it. There are truths that should change the way we live. There are things that when we come to see it, as they say, we cannot unsee it. Today we celebrate what should be for us this most central truth, the resurrection of Jesus. If we truly believe that Jesus has risen from the dead, what we celebrate today, this should change our perspective and our life entirely. Nothing should be the same after that. We see this so beautifully in the gospel today. The incredible change that happened to the disciples of Jesus, to Peter, to John, and to Mary Magdalene. Put yourself in their shoes for a moment. Peter, in particular. Peter had been so close to Jesus. Peter had followed Jesus his entire life, left behind his industry as a fisher to follow Christ, placed all his hope in Christ, believed that Jesus was the Messiah, had so much trust. And then what happened? Jesus, very unexpectedly for Peter, was arrested. And how did Peter respond? He betrayed him. He said that he never knew him. And then he had heard the news that Christ had been tried, found guilty, tortured, and put to death. What was going through his mind when he came to the tomb that morning? We see it now and we think, of course, he would have known that Jesus was risen from the dead. But that's not the case. If he knew this, he would not have denied him. Rather, Peter certainly went to the tomb with a very heavy heart, perhaps to mourn, not just for Jesus, but what he had done. To mourn for his hopes that he had placed in Christ. To mourn for his lack of direction, knowing what would happen now in his life. But imagine the change now when he comes to see the empty tomb. Imagine the change in John. Imagine the change in Mary Magdalene when she recognizes the risen Lord. They have been transformed from mourning, from hopelessness, into an entirely new perspective. The belief in the resurrection, their vision of that, has changed the way they see their lives. And we see in the Acts of the Apostles from the first reading this incredible change now in Peter. Peter is no longer afraid. Peter no longer denies Christ. Peter goes out and proclaims the good news boldly. Peter goes out, as we know, eventually to be martyred for the truth, to give his life for Jesus Christ. This belief in the resurrection changed everything for the early disciples. So too, this belief in the resurrection should change our lives. Once we believe it, once we see it, we can no longer approach our lives in the same way. How does the resurrection change our lives? We, of course, celebrate today. We are filled with joy, but it must be something deeper. It must change the way that we think, feel, act, and believe. C.S. Lewis once wrote the following. He said, "What would change in your life if you truly believed in the resurrection and the resurrection of the dead? What would change in your life if all the people that you interacted with during the day, you believed that they would live forever, that you would be communion with them forever?" I know for me it might change the way that I drive and perhaps use my horn while I'm driving, but we can consider that. What change would that make in our lives if we truly believed everyone we interacted with was destined for eternity? What change would it make in my heart when I consider the mourning of loved ones who have passed away? What change would it make for me if I'm struggling with something, maybe a bad habit, maybe hopelessness, and I place my hope in the resurrection of Jesus? What change does it make in my life when I recognize that Christ is the victor, that Christ is the King, that we are called to bring up Jesus' kingdom, that in the end he will vanquish all, that Jesus will reign over all for all eternity? This resurrection of Jesus really is this idea, this belief, this reality that when we believe it, when we see it, it needs to change our lives. We can, of course, each of us, however, kind of forget this central belief for us. We can get busy. We can get involved with life. It's only natural. For this reason, we're given this grace each year to celebrate Easter, to celebrate the resurrection of Christ, to remind ourselves and recommit ourselves to this central reality of our faith that should change us. We have, of course, the symbol of the Easter candle in front of us, which we blessed anew at the Easter Vigil, the sign of Jesus' victory over life and death, the sign that Christ is the light of the world, the sign that in our baptism we recall we receive those candles to be the light of Christ in the world around us. After this homily, we're going to have an opportunity to recommit ourselves once again to our belief in the resurrection of Jesus. We will once again renew our baptismal vows, those baptismal promises that at our baptism may have been made by our parents and godparents, and now we make it anew for ourselves. Following this, I will go throughout the congregation and sprinkle everybody with the blessed water, this water that reminds us of our baptism. As we renew our vows, let us really deeply ask ourselves, today, as we celebrate the resurrection and we remind ourselves of the central belief of our faith, what today do I want to change? What do I want the light of the resurrection to touch? Perhaps, maybe, I'm struggling, as I mentioned, with hopelessness. That joy of the resurrection, let us ask, to enter our hearts. Perhaps I'm struggling, maybe, to go forward, to go by, to change some behavior, to forgive. Let us ask the resurrection of Christ, His grace, to come into these areas in our life. Some truths, once we know them, must change everything. Jesus is truly risen from the dead, and because of this, our lives can never be the same.